Metropolis by Thea Von Harbou. Part 12. A vault, like the vault of a sepulchre, human heads so closely crowded as to produce the effects of clods of a freshly ploughed field. All faces turned to one point, to the source of a light, as mild as God. Candles burnt with sword-like flames, slender, lustrous swords of light stood in a circle around the head of a girl. Freda stood pressed into the background of the arch, so far from the girl that he perceived of her face nothing but the shimmer of its pallor, the wonder of the eyes and the blood-red mouth. His eyes hung upon this blood-red mouth as though it were the middle point of earth, to which, by eternal law, his blood must pour down. Tantalizing was the mouth. All the 7 deadly sins had such a mouth. The woman on the scarlet-coloured beast who bore the name Babylon on her forehead had such a mouth. He pressed both hands to his eyes in order no longer to see this mouth of deadly sin. Now he heard more clearly. Yes, that was her voice, the voice which sounded as though God could refuse it nothing. Was that really it? The voice came from out the blood-red mouth. It was like a flame, hot and pointed. It was full of a wicked sweetness. The voice said, "My brothers." But no peace proceeded from out these words. Little red snakes hissed through the air. The air was hot, an agony to breathe. Groaning heavily, Freda opened his eyes. Dark, angry waves were the heads before him. These waves frothed, raged, and roared. Here and there a hand shot up in the air. Words sprang up, foam flecks of the surf. But the voice of the girl was like a tongue of fire, drawing, enticing, burning above the heads. Which is more pleasant, water or wine? Wine is more pleasant. Who drinks the water? We. Who drinks the wine? The masters of the machines. Which is more pleasant, meat or dry bread? Meat is more pleasant. Who eats the dry bread? We. Who eats the meat? The masters of the machines. Which is more pleasant to wear, blue linen or white silk? White silk is more pleasant to wear. Who wears the blue linen? We. Who wears the white silk? The masters, the sons of the masters. Where is it more pleasant to live, upon or under the earth? It is more pleasant to live upon the earth. Who lives under the earth? We. Who lives upon the earth? The masters of the machines. Where are your wives? In misery. Where are your children? In misery. What do your wives do? They starve. What do your children do? They cry. What do the wives of the masters of the machines do? They feast. What do the children of the masters of the machines do? They play. Who are the providers? We. Who are the squanderers? The masters of the machines. What are you? Slaves. No, what are you? Dogs. No, what are you? Tell us. You are fools, blockheads. Throughout your morning, your midday, your evening, your night, the machine howls for food, For food! You are the food! You are the living food! The machine devours you like fodder and then spews you up again. Why do you batten the machines with your bodies? Why do you oil the joints of the machines with your brains? Why do you not let the machines starve, you fools? Why do you not let them perish, blockheads? Why do you feed them? The more you feed them, the more they greed for your flesh, for your bones, for your brains. You are 10,000. You are 100,000. Why do you not throw yourselves, 100,000 murdering fists, upon the machines and strike them dead? You are the masters of the machines. You, not the others who walk in their white silk. Turn the world about. Stand the world on its head. Murder the living and the dead. Take the inheritance from living and dead. You have waited long enough. The hour has come. A voice shouted from among the multitude, "Lead us on, Maria!" A mighty wave, all the heads broke forward. The blood-red mouth of the girl laughed and flamed. The eyes above it flamed, huge and greenish-black. She raised her arms with an unspeakable, difficult, burden-raising, sweet, mad gesture. The slim body grew and stretched itself up. The girl's hands touched above her hair parting. Over her shoulders, her breasts, her hips, her knees, there ran an incessant, a barely perceptible trembling. It was as though the girl were carried higher and higher by this trembling, though she did not move her feet. She said, "Come, come, I will lead you. I will dance the dance of death before you. I will dance the dance of the murderers before you." The multitude moaned. The multitude gasped. The multitude stretched out its hands. The multitude bowed head and neck low, as though its shoulders, its back, should be a carpet for the girl. The multitude fell on its knees with a groan. One single beast felled with the hatchet. The girl raised her foot and stepped upon the neck of the outstretched beast. A voice shouted out, sobbing with rage and pain, "You are not Maria!" The multitude turned around. The multitude saw a man standing in the background of the arch, a man from whose shoulders the coat had fallen. Under the coat he wore the white silk. The man was more ghastly to see than one who has bled to death. He stretched out his hand and he pointed to the girl. He yelled out, "You are not Maria! No, you are not Maria!" The head of the multitude stared at the man who was a stranger among them, who wore the white silk. "You are not Maria!" he yelled. "Maria preaches peace and not murder." The eyes of the multitude began to glare dangerously. The girl stood bolt upright in the neck of the multitude. She began to totter. It seemed as though she would fall onto her white face, in which the blood-red mouth, the mouth of deadly sin, flamed like hellfire. But she did not fall. She held herself upright. She swayed slightly, but she held herself upright. She stretched out her hand and pointed at Freda, calling in a voice which sounded like glass, "Look, look, the son of Joe Fredison. The son of Joe Fredison is among you." The multitude shouted. The multitude hurled itself around. The multitude made to lay hold of the son of Joe Fredison. He did not resist. He stood pressed against the wall. He stared at the girl with a gaze in which belief in eternal damnation was to be read. It seemed as if he were already dead, and as though his lifeless body were falling, ghost-like, upon the fists of those who wished to murder him. A voice roared, "Dog in white silken skin!" An arm shot up, a knife flashed out. Upon the billowing neck of the multitude stood the girl. It was as if the knife came flying from out her eyes. But before the knife could plunge into the white silk which covered the heart of the son of Joe Fredison, a man threw himself as a shield before his breast, and the knife ripped open blue linen. Blue linen was dyed purple-red. "Brothers," said the man, dying yet standing upright. He was covering the son of Joe Fredison with his whole body. He turned his head a little to catch Freda's gaze. He sat with a smile which was transfigured in pain. "Brothers!" Freda recognized him. It was Georgie. It was number 11,811, which was now going out, and which, going out, was protecting him. He wanted to push past Georgie, but the dying man stood like one crucified, with outstretched arms and hands clawing into the edge of the niches which were behind him. He held his eyes, which were like jewels, fixedly set on the multitude which was storming towards him. "Brothers," he said. "Murderers! Brother murderers!" said the dying mouth. The multitude left him alone and raced on. On the shoulders of the multitude the girl was dancing and singing. She sang with her blood-red mouth of deadly sin. "We've passed sentence upon the machines. We have condemned the machines to death. The machines must die, to hell with them. Death, death, death to the machines." Like the rush of 1,000 wings, the steps of the multitude thundered through the narrow passes of the city of dead. The girl's voice died away. The steps died away. Georgie loosened his hands and pitched forward. Freda caught him. He sank upon his knee. Georgie's head fell upon his breast. Warn the town," said Georgie. "And are you dying?" gave Freda as an answer. His bewildered eyes ran along the walls in the niches of which slept the 1,000-year-old dead. "There is no justice in this world." "Uttermost justice," said 11,811. "From weakness, sin. From sin, atonement. Warn the town. Warn." "I'm going to leave you alone." "I beg you to. Beg you." Freda got up, despair in his eyes. He ran to the passage in which the multitude had died away. "Not that way," said Georgie. "You won't get through that way any more." "I know no other way." "I'll take you." "You're dying, Georgie. The first step is your death." "Won't you warn the town? Do you want to be an accessory?" "Come," said Freda. He raised Georgie up. With his hand pressed to his wound, the man began to run. "Pick up your lamp and come," said Georgie. He ran so that Freda could hardly follow him, into the 10,000-year-old dust, dripped with blood which welled up from the freshly inflicted wound. He held Freda's arm, clasped, pulling him forward. "Hurry," he murmured. "Hurry, there's no time to lose." Passages, crossings, passages, steps, passages. A flight of stairs which led steeply upwards. Georgie fell at the first step. Freda wanted to hold him. He pushed him away. "Hurry," he said. He indicated the stairs with his hand. "Up. You can't go wrong now. Hurry up." "And you, Georgie? And you?" "I," said Georgie, turning his head to the wall. "I am not going to answer any more questions." Freda let go of Georgie's hands. He began to run up the stairs. Night embraced him, the night of Metropolis, this light, mad, drunken night. Everything was still the same as usual. Nothing indicated the storm which was about to break out from inside the earth, under Metropolis, to murder the machine city. But it seemed to Joe Fredison's son as if the stones were giving way under his feet, as though he had heard in the air the rushing of wings, the rushing of the wings of strange monsters, beings with women's bodies and snakes' heads, beings half bull, half angel, devils adorned with crowns, human-faced lions. It seemed to him as if he saw death sitting on the new Tower of Babel in hat and wide cloak, whetting his propped-up scythe. He reached the new Tower of Babel. Everything was as usual. The dawn was fighting the first fight with the early morning. He looked for his father. He did not find him. Nobody could say where Joe Fredison had gone at midnight. The brain pan of the new Tower of Babel was empty. Freda wiped from his brow the sweat which was running in drops over his temples. "I must find my father," he said. "I must call him, cost what it may." Men with servants' eyes looked at him. Men who knew nothing apart from blind obedience, who could not advise, still less help. Joe Fredison's son stepped into his father's place, at the table where his great father used to sit. He was as white as the silk which he wore as he stretched out his hand and pressed his fingers on the little blue metal plate, which no man ever touched apart from Joe Fredison. Then the great Metropolis began to roar. Then she raised her voice, her behemoth voice, but she was not screaming for food. No, she was roaring. Danger! Above the gigantic city, above the slumbering city, the monstrous voice roared, "Danger! Danger!" A barely perceptible trembling ran through the new Tower of Babel, as if the earth which bore it was shuddering, frightened by a dream betwixt sleeping and waking. Maria did not dare to stir. She did not even dare to breathe. She did not close her eyes for quaking fear that, between the lowering and raising of her eyelids, a fresh horror would come upon her and seize her. She did not know how much time had elapsed since the hands of Joe Fredison had closed around the throat of Rotwang, the great inventor. The two men had been standing in the shadow, and yet it seemed to the girl as if the outline of both of their forms had remained behind in the darkness in fiery lines. The bulk of Joe Fredison standing there, his hands thrown forward like two claws, Rodwang's body which hung in these claws and which was dragged away, pulled forth through the frame of the door, which closed behind them both. What was happening behind this door? She heard nothing. She listened with all her senses, but she heard nothing, not the least sound. Minutes passed, endless minutes. There was nothing to be heard, neither step nor cry. Was she breathing, wall to wall with murder? Ah, that clutch at Rotwang's neck, that form being dragged away, pulled from darkness into deeper darkness. Was he dead? Was he lying behind that door in a corner, face twisted around to his back, with broken neck and glazed eyes? Was the murderer still standing behind that door? The room in which she was seemed suddenly to become filled with the sound of a dull thumping. It grew louder and louder, more and more violent. It deafened the ears and yet remained dull. Gradually she realized it was her own heartbeat. If somebody had come to the room, she would not have heard him. Her heart was beating so. Stammered words of a childish prayer passed through her brain confusedly and senselessly. "Dear God, I pray thee, bide with me, take care of me, amen." She thought of Freda. "No, don't cry, don't cry. Dear God, I pray thee." This silence was no longer bearable. She must see, must be certain. But she did not dare to take a step. She had got up and could not find the courage to return to her old seat. She was as though sewn into a black sack, She held her arms pressed close to her body. Horrors stood at her neck and blew at her. Now she heard, yes, she heard something, yet the sound did not come from inside the house, it came from far away. This sound even penetrated the walls of Rotwang's house, which were otherwise penetrated by no sound wherever it came from. It was the voice of Metropolis, but she was screaming what she had never screamed before. She was not screaming for food, she was screaming, "Danger! Danger!" The screaming did not stop, it howled on incessantly. Who had dared to unchain the voice of the great Metropolis, which otherwise obeyed no one but Joe Fredison? Was Joe Fredison no longer in the house, or was this voice to call him, this wild roar of "Danger! Danger!" What danger was threatening Metropolis? Fire could not be alarming the city, to make her roar so as though she'd gone mad. No high tide was threatening Metropolis. The elements were subdued and quiet. Danger? Of man? Revolt? Was that it? Rotwang's words fluttered through her brain. In the city of the dead, what was going on in the city of the dead? Did the uproar come from the city of the dead? Was destruction welling up from the depths? "Danger! Danger!" screamed the voice of the great city. As though by power of a thrust within, Maria ran all at once to the door and tore it open. The room which lay before her, just as that which she had left, received its solitary light, and sparely enough, through the window. At the first glance round, the room seemed to be empty. A strong current of air coming from an invisible source streamed hot and even through the room, bringing in the roaring of the town with renewed force. Maria stooped forward. She recognized the room. She'd run along these walls in her despairing search for a door. There was a door which had neither bolt nor lock. Copper red in the gloomy wood of the door glowed the seal of Solomon, the pentagram. There in the middle was a square, the trapdoor, through which some time ago, a period of which she could not measure, she had entered the house of the great inventor. The bright square of the window fell upon the square of the door. A trap, thought the girl. She turned her head around. Would the great Metropolis never stop roaring? "Danger! Danger! Danger!" roared the town. Maria took a step, then stopped again. There was something lying over there. There was something lying there on the floor, between her and the trapdoor. Something was lying on the floor. It was an unrecognizable heap. It was something dark and motionless. It might be human, and was. Perhaps only a sack, but it lay there and must be passed around if one wanted to reach the trapdoor. With a great display of courage than had ever before in her life been necessary, Maria silently set one foot before the other. The heap on the floor did not move. She stood, bending far forward, making her eyes reconnoitre, deafened by her own heartbeat and the roar of the uproar proclaiming city. Now she saw clearly. What was lying there was a man. The man lay on his face, legs drawn tightly to his body, as though he'd gathered them to him to push himself up and had not then found any more strength to do it. One hand lay thrown over his neck, and its crooked fingers spoke more eloquently than most eloquent of mouths of a wild self-defence. But the other hand of the heap of humanity lay stretched far away from it, on the square of the trapdoor, as though wishing in itself to be a bolt to the door. The hand was not of flesh and bone. The hand was of metal. The hand was the masterpiece of Rotwang, the great inventor. Maria threw a glance at the door on which the seal of Solomon glowed. She ran up to it, although she knew it to be pointless to implore this exonerable door for liberty. She felt under her feet, distant, quite dull, strong and impelling, a shake as if of distant thunder. The voice of the great Metropolis roared, "Danger!" Maria clasped her hands and raised them to her mouth. She ran up to the trapdoor. She knelt down, She looked at the heap of humanity which lay on the edge of the trapdoor, the metal hand of which seemed obstinately to be defending the trapdoor. The fingers of the other hand, thrown over the man's neck, were turned towards her, poised high like a beast before the spring. And the trembling shake again, and now much mightier. Maria seized the iron ring of the trapdoor. She pushed it up. She wanted to pull up the door, but the hand which lay upon it, held the door, clutched fast. Maria heard the chattering of her teeth. She pushed herself across on her knees towards the motionless heap of humanity. With infinite care, she grasped the hand which lay as a steel bolt across the trapdoor. She felt the coldness of death proceeding from the hand. She pressed her teeth into her white lips. As she pushed back the hand with all her strength, the heap of humanity rolled over on its side and the grey face appeared, staring upwards. Maria tore open the trapdoor. She swung herself down into the black square. She did not leave herself time to close the door. Perhaps it was that she had not the courage once more to emerge from the depths she had gained, to see what lay there at the edge of the trapdoor. She felt the steps under her feet and felt right and left the damp walls. She ran through the darkness, thinking only half-consciously, if you lose your way in the city of the dead. The red shoes of the magician occurred to her. She forced herself to stand still, forced herself to listen. What was that strange sound which seemed to be coming from the passages round about? It sounded like yawning. It sounded as though the stone were yawning. There was a trickling above her head. A light grating sound grew audible, as though joint upon joint were loosening itself. Then all was still for a while, but not for long. Then the grating sound began again. The stone was living. Yes, the stone was living. The stories of the city of the dead were coming to life. The shock of extreme violence shook the earth on which Maria was standing. Rumbling of falling stones, trickling, silence. Maria was pitched against the stone wall, but the wall moved behind her. Maria shrieked. She threw up her hands and raced onwards. She stumbled over stones which lay across her way, but she did not fall. She did not know what was happening but the rustle of mystery which the storm drives along before it. The proclamation of great evil hung in the air above her, driving her forward. There, a light in front of her. She ran towards it, an arched vault, great burning candles. Yes, she knew the place. She had often stood here and spoken to those whom she called brothers. Who but she had the right to light these candles? For whom had they burnt today? The flames blew sideways in a violent draught of air. The wax dropped. Maria seized the candle and ran on with it. She came to the background of the arched vault. A coat lay on the floor. None of her brothers wore such a coat over his blue linen uniform. She bent down. She saw, in the 1,000-year-old dust of the arched vault, a trail of dark drops. She stretched out her hand and touched one of the drops. The tip of her finger was dyed red. She straightened herself up and closed her eyes. She staggered a little, and a smile passed over her face, as though she hoped she was dreaming. Dear God, I pray thee, abide with me, take care of me, amen. She leaned her head against the stone wall. The wall quaked. Maria looked right up. In the dark, black vaulting of the stone roof above her, there gaped a winding cleft. What did that mean? What was there above her? Up there were the mole tunnels of the underground railway. What was happening up there? It sounded as though 3,000 giants were playing ninepins with iron mountains, throwing them one against the other amidst yells. The cleft gaped wider. The air was filled with dust, but it was not dust, it was ground stone. The structure of the city of the dead quaked right down to the centre of the earth. It was as if mighty fist had suddenly opened a sluice, but instead of water, a maelstrom of stones hurtled from the dammed-up bed. Blocks, mortar, crumbles, stone splinters, ruins poured down from the arch. A curtain of stone, a hail of stones, and above the falling and the smashing was the power of thunder which was roaring and roaring long and resonantly through the destruction. A current of air, an irresistible whirl, swept the girl aside like a blade of straw. The skeletons rose up from the niches. Bones rose up, erect, and skulls rolled. Doomsday seemed to be breaking over the 1,000-year-old city of the dead. But above the great metropolis, the monster voice was still howling and howling. Red lay the morning above the stone oceans of the city. The red morning saw amidst the stone ocean of the city, rolling along a broad and endless stream. The stream was 12 files deep. They walked in even step. Men, 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 all in the same uniform, from throat to ankle, in the dark blue linen, bare feet in the same hard shoes, hair tightly pressed down by the same black caps. And they all had the same faces, wild faces with eyes like firebrands, and they all sang the same song without melody, but an oath, a storm vow. We've passed sentence upon the machines. We have condemned the machines to death. The machines must die. To hell with them. Death, death, death to the machines. The girl danced along before the streaming, bawling multitude. She led the multitude on. She led the tramping multitude forward against the heart of the machine city of Metropolis. She said, "Come, come, come, I will lead you. I will dance the dance of death before you. I will dance the dance of the murderers before you." "Destroy, destroy, destroy," yelled the crowd. They acted without plan, and yet following a law, destruction was the name of the law. They obeyed it. The multitude divided. A broad stream poured itself frothing down into the tunnel of the underground railway. The trains were standing ready on all the tracks. Searchlights wedged themselves into the darkness which crouched in the shafts above the rails. The multitude yelled. Here was a plaything for giants. Were they not as strong as 3,000 giants? They dragged the drivers from the drivers' places. They released the trains and let them run, one after the other, forwards. The rails rumbled, the thundering carriage snakes, glittering lighted, hurled along by the emptiness, dashed into the brownish darkness. 2, 3, 4 of the drivers fought like men possessed, but the mob sucked them up. "Will you shut your mouths, you dogs? We are the masters. We want to play. We want to play like giants." They howled the song of their deadly hatred. "We've passed sentence upon the machines. We have condemned the machines to death." They counted the seconds. 59, 60, 61, 62. Now! Somewhere in the depths of the tunnel, a crash as if the globe were splitting. Once and once again. The mob howled, "The machines must die. To hell with them. Death, death, death to the machines." Then, what happened then? From one of the tunnels there broke forth a train, like a steed of fire, with sparkling lights, driverless, at tearing speed, galloping death. From whence did this hell horse come? Where were the giants who were thus giving answers to the giants' game of the mob? The train vanished amid shrieks, and some second later came the tearing crash from the depths of the pits. And the second train was crashing onwards, sent off by unknown hands. The stones shook loose under the feet of the mob. Smoke gushed up from the pit. Suddenly the lights went out. Only the clocks, the whitish, shimmering clocks, hung as patches of light in the darkness, which was filled with long, dim, drifting clouds. The mob pressed towards the stairs and up them. Behind them, unchained demons, pulling their reeling carriages along behind them. The engines, now released, hurled themselves on to fall upon each other and break into flames. Metropolis had a brain. Metropolis had a heart. The heart of the machine city of Metropolis dwelt in a white cathedral-like building. The heart of the machine city of Metropolis was guarded by one single man. The man's name was Grot, and he loved his machine. The machine was a universe to itself. Above the deep mysteries of this delicate joints, like the sun's discs, like the halo of a divine being, stood the silver spinning wheel, the spokes of which appealed in the whirl of revolution as a single gleaming disc. This disc filled out the black wall of the building with its entire breadth and height. No machine in all Metropolis which did not receive its power from this heart. One single lever controlled the marvel of steel. All the treasures of the world heaped up before him would not for Grot have outweighed this machine. When the grey hour of dawn, Grot heard the voice of the great Metropolis roaring. He glanced at the clock of the brow of the wall where was the door and thought, "That's against all nature and regularity." When the red hour of sunrise, Grot saw the stream of the multitude rolling along 12 files deep, led by a girl dancing to the rhythm of the yelling mob. Grot set the lever of the machine to safety, carefully closed the door of the building and waited. The mob thundered against his door. "Oh, knock away," thought Grot. "That door can stand a good bit." He looked at the machine. The wheel was spinning slowly. The beautiful spokes were playing plainly to be seen. Grot nodded to his beautiful machine. "They will not trouble us long," thought he. He waited for a signal from the new Tower of Babel, for a word from Joe Fredison. The word did not come. "He knows," thought Grot, "that he can rely on me." The door quaked like a giant drum. The mob hurled itself, a living battering ram, against it. "There are rather a lot of them, it seems to me," thought Grot. He looked at the door. It trembled, but it held, and it looked as though it would still hold for a long time. Grot nodded to himself in deep contentment. He would have loved to light his pipe, if only smoking had not been forbidden here. He heard the yelling of the mob and rebound upon rebound against the singing door with a feeling of smug fierceness. He loved the door. It was his ally. He turned around and looked at his machine. He nodded at it affectionately. "We too, eh? What do you say to that boozy lot of fatheads, machine?" The storm before the door wound itself up into a typhoon. It was the hackling fury born of long resistance. "Open the door!" hackled the fury. "Open the door, you damned scoundrel!" Wouldn't that just suit you, thought Grot. How well that door was holding, his gallant door. What were those drunken apes out there singing about? "We've passed sentence upon the machines. We have condemned the machines to death." Oh, ho, ho. He could sing too, could Grot. He could sing drunken songs just fine. He kicked with both heels against the pedestal of the machine upon which he was sitting. He pushed the black cape down lower on his neck. With his red fists resting on his knees, opening wide his mouth, he sang with his whole throat, while his little wild eyes were fixed on the door. "Come on, you boozy lot, if you dare. Come in if you want a good hiding, you lousy apes. Your mother forgot to pull your pants tight when you were little, you gutter snipes. You're not even fit for pig's swill. You fell from the rubbish cart when it took the big curve, and now you stand before the door. Before my gallant door and ball, open the door, open the door. Let the devil open it for you, you hens, bugs." The pedestal of the machine boomed under the drumming rhythm of his boot heels. But suddenly they both stopped, drumming and singing. An exceedingly powerful, exceedingly white light flared up 3 times under the dome of the building. A sound signal as gentle and as penetrating as the gong beat of a temple bell became audible, overpowering every sound. "Yes," said Grot, the guard of the heart machine. He sprang to his feet. He raised his broad face, which shone with joyful eagerness of obedience. "Yes, here I am." A voice said slowly and clearly, "Open the door and give up the machine." Grot stood motionless. "Repeat instructions," said the quiet voice. The guard of the heart machine swung his head violently this way and that like a weighty bundle. I didn't understand," he said gaspingly. The quiet voice spoke in a more forceful tone. "Open the door and give up the machine." The man still said nothing, gazing stupidly upwards. "Repeat instructions," said the quiet voice. The guard of the heart machine drew in a great draught of air. "Who is speaking there?" he asked. "What lousy swine is speaking there?" "Open the door, Grot." "The devil I will, and give up the machine." "The machine?" said Grot. My machine?" "Yes," said the quiet voice. The guard of the heart machine began to shake. This was a quiet blue face in which the eyes stood like whitish balls. The mob, which was throwing itself as a buffer against the ringing door, yelled, hoarse with yelling, "The machines must die! To hell with them! Death, death, death to the machines!" "Who is speaking there?" asked the man so loudly that his words were a scream. "Joe Fredison is speaking." "I want the password." "The password is 1003. The machine is running on half power. You have set the lever to safety." The guard of the heart machine stood like a log. Then the log turned itself clumsily around, staggered to the door and tore at the bolts. The mob heard it. It yelled triumph. The door flew open. The mob swept aside the man who was standing on its threshold. The mob hurled itself towards the machine. The mob made to lay hands upon the machine. A dancing girl was leading the mob on. "Look," she shouted, "look at the beating heart of Metropolis. What shall be done to the heart of Metropolis?" "We've passed sentence upon the machines. We have condemned the machines to death. The machines must die. To hell with them." But the mob did not catch up the girl's song. The mob stared over at the machine, at the beating heart of the great machine city which was called Metropolis, and which they had fed. They pressed up slowly as a single body before the machine, which gleamed like silver. In the face of the mob stood hatred. In the face of the mob stood superstitious fear. Desire for the last destruction stood in the face of the mob. But before it could take expression, Grot the guard threw himself before his machine. There was no filthy word which he did not raise to chuck into the face of the mob. The dirtiest term of revilement was not dirty enough for him to apply to the mob. The mob turned red eyes upon him. The mob glared at him. The mob saw the man there in front of them was abusing them in the name of the machine. For them, the man and the machine melted into one. Man and machine deserved the same hatred. They pushed forward against man and machine. They seized the man and meant the machine. They roared him down. They stamped him underfoot. They dragged him hither and thither and out of the door. They forgot the machine, for they had the man, had the guard of the heartbeat of all the machines, thinking that in tearing the man away from the heart machine, they were tearing the heart from the breast of the great machine city. What should be done to the heart of Metropolis? It should be trodden underfoot by the mob. "Death!" yelled the victorious mob. "Death to the machines!" yelled the victorious mob. They did not see that they no longer had a leader. They did not see that the girl was missing from the procession. The girl was standing before the heart machine of the city. Her smile was cool and silver. She stretched out her hand, which was more delicate than glass. She seized the weighty lever, which was set to safety. She pressed the lever round, still smiling, then walked out with light, mad step. Behind her, the machine began to race. Above the deep mysteries of its delicate joints, like the sun's disk, like the halo of a divine being, stood the silver racing wheel, the spokes of which appeared in the whirl of revolution as a single circling disk. The heart of Metropolis Joe Fredison City began to run up a temperature, seized by a deadly illness. End of part 12. If you are enjoying these audiobooks, please take the time to subscribe, press like, leave a comment, or share this channel with your friends who also enjoy listening to audiobooks. This would help this channel immensely. Thanks.